everyone, I'm Miss Lau, teaching primary school math and science at the Science Academy. PSLE is drawing near, so let's go through some past year PSLE questions based on experiment techniques. This question is from the 2024 PSLE, Booklet B, question 33. This question requires students to recognize why there can only be one change variable in any experiment, which is to ensure that any change in the measured variable is only due to a change in the changed variable and no other variables. So you can use this template to answer any questions about the purpose of a control setup or any controlled variables. Now, applying this template to our question, our answer would best be to ensure that any change in the size of the tiny openings is only due to a change in the presence of pollutant S and no other variables. This question is from the 2022 PSLE, question 31B. This question requires students to be able to identify the variable which changed, which might affect the measured variable. So in this case, since they've already mentioned in the question about the thumb and the other fingers, our variable would be the differences between the thumb and the other fingers, which is the size of your finger. So the size of your finger affects the exposed surface area of the finger to bacteria, which would also affect the amount of bacteria measured. So using the same thumb ensures that the surface area exposed to bacteria is constant. This question is from the 2020 PSLE, question 38. So this question requires students to recognize that the wooden strip with plasticine swings due to gravitational force, and the number of swings is affected by the amount of gravitational energy that the wooden strip with plasticine has. So gravitational energy is influenced by the mass of the object and its distance from the ground. As such, for part A, the variables to keep constant has to be something that could influence the amount of gravitational energy that the system has, but is not our change variable, which is the mass of the plasticine. So answers for this question could be the position where the wooden strip is released or the length of the string. Now, another variable to keep constant could also be the amount of force acting on the wooden strip with plasticine. Since gravitational force should be the only force affecting the number of swings, there should not be any other pushing force acting on the wooden strip with plasticine at the start, having another alternative answer to our question. For part B, when asked for a relationship between a change variable and the measured variable, use this template for a clear and direct answer. As the change variable changes, the measured variable changes or does not change. Applying it to this question, as the mass of the plasticine increases, the time taken for 10 complete swings remains the same, around 15 seconds. For part C, in obtaining accurate results, we want to try and minimize human error. So in questions like this, when we are recording the time taken, we want to take the average reading of repeated experiments to reduce any errors from reaction time in recording the measured variable. So in this particular case, this can be done by taking measurements for more masses, repeating the measurement for each mass and taking the average reading, or measuring the time for more complete swings instead of just 10 swings. This question is from 2020 PSLE, question 34B. So this question requires students to recognize that the change variable, which in this case is the opacity of the lid, is influencing the rate of photosynthesis, which would then explain an increase in the amount of oxygen in container A. So since our experiment is testing on the rate of photosynthesis, inaccurate results could have been due to variables that affect the rate of photosynthesis that is not the change variable, in this case, which is the amount of light. So this could include a different number of tiny organisms in the container or different amounts of carbon dioxide in the containers. This question is from the 2020 PSLE, question 32B. A hypothesis is an untested conclusion. As such, we would want to answer this question as if you were writing a conclusion to the experiment, making sure to address how the change variable affects the measured variable. In this case, our hypothesis would be a shirt with a smell released by children infected with malaria would be more attractive to mosquito A. Now, part 2 requires students to recognize that the way to measure results is by counting the number of mosquitoes on the shirt. As such, we would want the mosquitoes to be seen clearly and not camouflaged with the shirt to make counting easier and more accurate. As such, using a white shirt increases contrast with the black mosquitoes and increases accuracy of the results as compared to a black shirt where mosquitoes would camouflage with the shirt.